The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the emergency session. Ambassador Zethkri of the Vorthan Collective stood at the center podium, his crystalline body glowing with urgent orange, light that pulsed faster than usual. The other aliens in the room shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the gravity of what was about to be discussed. Jake Morrison sat quietly in the human section, his weathered face showing no emotion, despite the tension in the air. The veteran commander had seen enough battles to know when danger was approaching, and right now every instinct told him trouble was coming. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Campbell reviewed data on her small device, occasionally glancing up at the alien, speaker with curious eyes. Zethkri began his presentation, and holographic images filled the space above the podium. The images showed Earth from orbit, then zoomed in to show major cities and installations. His voice carried through the translation system with perfect clarity as he addressed the assembled delegates. Honored representatives of the galaxy, I bring urgent warnings about the species called humans from the third planet of the Sol system. Our intelligence networks have discovered disturbing patterns in their behavior that suggest a threat to galactic peace. The hologram shifted to show underground facilities beneath human cities. Complex tunnel systems stretched for miles in every direction, connecting buildings and creating vast networks that seemed to have no civilian purpose. Weapon storage areas and training facilities were clearly visible in the scanned images. They present their world as a sanctuary of peace and cooperation, Zethkri continued. Yet every major population center sits directly above massive underground military complexes. Their civilian infrastructure doubles as military installations designed for extended warfare. Even their children learn combat tactics through what they call games and sports. Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber as other species recognized similar observations from their own encounters with humans. The Krellian representative, an insectoid creature named Vextar, clicked his sharp mandibles nervously before standing to speak. The collective speaks the truth. Our trading vessels report that human merchants always seem to know exactly where our ships will appear in normal space. Their cargo vessels carry weapons that rival the firepower of our military destroyers. When we scan their planets from orbit, we detect energy signatures that suggest massive hidden installations. More aliens began sharing their experiences. The bird-like Aryans reported that human colony worlds were positioned at strategic points throughout their territory, creating what appeared to be a defensive network spanning multiple star systems. The aquatic depths dwellers mentioned that human underwater cities seemed designed more for military purposes than civilian habitation. Admiral Susan Brooks, the head of Earth Space Command, rose from her seat to address the growing accusations. Her uniform was simple compared to the elaborate dress of other military leaders in the chamber, but her presence commanded respect. She walked to the speaking platform with calm confidence. Honored delegates, these accusations are completely unfounded. Earth and all human colonies are peaceful worlds seeking only trade and friendship with our galactic neighbors. Our defensive preparations are standard precautions that any responsible government would take to protect its citizens from the unknown dangers of space. Her words were diplomatic and reasonable, but they did little to calm the fears spreading through the chamber. The evidence presented by multiple species painted a picture of a civilization that had spent decades preparing for large-scale conflict while presenting a peaceful facade to the galaxy. Dr. Campbell stood to support her admiral. The installations you describe serve multiple purposes including scientific research, resource management, and emergency shelter for our populations. Any military applications are purely defensive in nature and pose no threat to peaceful species. But the damage was already done. Fear and suspicion rippled through the assembled delegates as species after species shared their concerns about humanity's true intentions. The peaceful humans they had known for decades suddenly seemed like potential threats hiding in plain sight. In the elevated viewing gallery reserved for non-voting observers, Emperor Vexthol of the Dominion Empire watched the proceedings with predatory interest. Unlike the other species present, he saw opportunity where they saw danger. His scaled features curved into what might have been a smile as he observed the growing panic among the galactic representatives. The Emperor leaned toward his military advisor, General Krexvol, and spoke in a low voice that would not carry to the main floor. The galaxy shows its weakness by cowering before these humans. If they truly have prepared such elaborate defenses, then they must be protecting something of great value. General Krexfall, a reptilian warrior with decades of conquest experience, nodded slowly. The other species fear these humans because they recognize superior preparation when they see it. But fear makes them retreat when they should be investigating the opportunity. Below them, the debate continued as more species shared intelligence about human activities. Mining operations that seemed too extensive for their stated purposes, research stations positioned at strategic locations, and civilian populations that moved with military precision during emergencies. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to see it. Ambassador Zethkri concluded his presentation with a final warning. The evidence is overwhelming that humanity has spent decades preparing for large-scale warfare while deceiving the galaxy about their peaceful intentions. We must take immediate action to contain this threat before they complete whatever plan they are implementing. The vote was swift and decisive. By an overwhelming majority, the Galactic Council agreed to impose strict limitations on human expansion and to monitor all human activities closely. Trade restrictions would be implemented immediately, and any human vessels entering alien space would be subject to detailed inspections. Admiral Brooks accepted the decision with dignity, though her eyes showed the disappointment she felt. Earth will comply with the Council's wishes and hopes that time will prove our peaceful intentions to our galactic neighbors. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Emperor Vexthul remained in his seat, studying the humans below. While other species saw humans as a threat to be contained, he saw them as a challenge to be conquered. The Dominion Empire had built its reputation on defeating strong opponents, and if the humans were truly as prepared as the evidence suggested, then conquering them would bring greater glory than any previous victory. The galaxy had recognized the trap that Earth represented, but they had chosen to avoid it rather than spring it. The Emperor would not make the same mistake. 3 months after the dramatic council meeting, Emperor Vexthul stood in the command center of his massive dreadnought subjugator, watching as his fleet assembled in the empty space between star systems. The ship's dark metal hull stretched for miles in every direction, bristling with weapons designed to crack the surface of planets and reduce entire civilizations to ash and rubble. General Krexfall approached the Emperor with the latest intelligence reports, his reptilian features showing the concern that had been growing since they began planning this campaign. The veteran commander had led successful invasions of dozens of worlds, but something about this mission felt different from their previous conquests. My lord, the intelligence we gathered from various sources confirms what the Galactic Council suspected about these humans. Their defensive preparations are far more extensive than any primitive species should possess. Every human world shows signs of massive underground construction and hidden military installations. The Emperor turned from the tactical display to face his general, his scaled features twisting into an expression of predatory anticipation. And that, my dear Krexfall, is exactly why we will succeed where other species have failed. They see a trap and flee in terror, but the Dominion Empire sees an opportunity for glorious conquest. Light years away, Captain Tony Rodriguez sat at his monitoring station in the deep space facility designated Delta 7, watching long-range sensors that could detect fleet movements across multiple star systems. The station appeared to be nothing more than a scientific research outpost, but its true purpose was to provide early warning of any threats approaching human space. The sensor readings that appeared on his screen made his blood run cold. Over 3,000 Dominion warships were moving in formation toward the outer edge of human territory, their course set directly for the Sol system. He immediately activated the emergency communication system to contact Earth Command. Colonel Nancy Peters received the transmission in her underground command center, buried deep beneath the North American continent. The facility had been disguised as a geological research station for decades, but it served as one of the primary coordination centers for Earth's planetary defense network. She studied the tactical information with her aide, Lieutenant Ben Foster, both officers recognizing the magnitude of the approaching threat. "How long until they reach Earth's outer sensor range?" Colonel Peters asked, her voice remaining calm despite the severity of the situation. Captain Rodriguez checked his calculations, twice before responding. At their current speed and heading, approximately 4 months until they enter the Sol system. The fleet composition suggests they're planning a full-scale invasion rather than a reconnaissance mission. Back aboard the subjugator, Emperor Vexthul stood before a massive holographic display showing the layout of human space. Star systems with human colonies glowed in soft blue light, connected by the trade routes and communication networks that linked their civilization together. To most observers, it would appear as a modest territory for a young spacefaring species. The galaxy fears these humans because they recognize the signs of a carefully laid trap, the Emperor explained to his assembled commanders. But they fail to understand the most important truth about traps. They are designed to catch specific prey, and the most elaborate traps are meant to capture the most dangerous predators. He gestured toward the display, highlighting the defensive installations that intelligence had identified throughout human space. These humans have spent decades preparing for an invasion by a major galactic power. Their hidden weapons, their secret installations, their defensive networks, all of it represents resources and technology that will belong to the Dominion once we defeat them. General Krexvoll shifted uncomfortably as he reviewed the briefing materials. "My lord, perhaps we should consider the warnings provided by the other species. The evidence suggests that engaging these humans could be more costly than our previous conquests." The Emperor's eyes flashed with dangerous fire as he turned to face his subordinate. "Are you suggesting cowardice, General? The Dominion Empire has conquered over 700 worlds across the galaxy. We have defeated species with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and centuries of military experience. No primitive species that learned to leave their home planet only 50 years ago will stand against our proven might." The other commanders in the room nodded agreement, though several showed signs of the same unease that troubled their general. The Dominion's military doctrine was based on overwhelming force applied swiftly and decisively, crushing enemy resistance before it could organize effective counterattacks. The approach had worked perfectly against hundreds of previous opponents. Besides, the Emperor continued, consider the strategic value of controlling human space. Their territory includes some of the most resource-rich systems in this galactic region. Their planets show signs of advanced industrial development despite their recent entry into galactic society. Conquering them will provide the Empire with both valuable resources and a strategic foothold for future expansion. The fleet continued its approach toward human space, while Earth's hidden monitoring stations tracked every ship and analyzed their capabilities. The information flowed through secure communication networks to command centers scattered across human territory, where military leaders prepared for the largest battle in their species' history. Dr. Richard Stone worked frantically in his laboratory buried 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, coordinating with similar facilities hidden around the globe. The Planetary Defense Initiative had been developing advanced weapons systems for decades, preparing for exactly this type of scenario. Now, all their careful planning would be put to the ultimate test. Status report on the grid systems, Dr. Stone called to his research team. "All primary installations are online and responding normally," replied Dr. Maria Santos from her console. "We have complete sensor coverage from Mercury orbit out to the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris larger than a basketball is being tracked and cataloged." Colonel Peters coordinated the global response from her command bunker, working with military leaders on every human world to ensure their defensive plans would work together seamlessly. The approaching Dominion fleet was massive and experienced, but they were about to discover that Earth had not spent decades preparing defenses for nothing. Emperor Vexthul remained confident as his fleet crossed into the outer regions of human space. The blue-green world of Earth grew slowly larger on his tactical displays, looking peaceful and defenseless to his experienced eyes. Soon it would be another jewel in the crown of the Dominion Empire, and the galaxy would learn what happened to species that tried to hide behind elaborate defensive preparations, instead of accepting the inevitable reality of conquest. As the Dominion fleet moved steadily toward the Sol system, Earth began revealing its true nature to those who knew where to look. Dr. Richard Stone stood in the main control room of Installation Omega, a facility that officially did not exist according to any government records. The underground complex stretched for miles in every direction, housing weapon systems that had been under development for over 30 years. "Bring all defensive grids to full operational status," Dr. Stone commanded as his team worked at dozens of monitoring stations. The facility hummed with barely contained energy, as systems that had been dormant for decades came to life throughout the solar system. Dr. Maria Santos looked up from her console, her face illuminated by the soft glow of tactical displays. Grid. Sections 7 through 15 are now fully online and responding to command protocols. We have complete sensor coverage and target acquisition capability from Mercury out to beyond Pluto's orbit. The surface of Earth appeared calm and peaceful to any casual observer, but beneath that serene exterior, entire cities were quietly transitioning to their wartime configurations. What had seemed like normal urban centers were revealing themselves to be carefully disguised military installations capable of supporting massive defensive operations. Colonel Nancy Peters coordinated the planetary response from her command center, working with facility commanders around the globe. "What is the status of civilian population relocation?" "Phase 1 evacuations are complete ahead of schedule," came the reply from Dr. Kevin Murphy, who was monitoring operations from what appeared to be a climate research station in Antarctica. "All major population centers have successfully transitioned to their underground facilities. Surface populations now consist entirely of military personnel and automated defense systems. The evacuation had been planned and practiced for decades, but most civilians believed they were simply participating in emergency preparedness drills. The elaborate underground cities that welcomed them had been disguised as subway systems, shopping centers, and industrial facilities. Now they served their true purpose as secure shelters for Earth's population during wartime. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser Liberty, studying tactical displays that showed the positioning of Earth's defensive fleet. Unlike the sleek and elegant vessels preferred by other galactic species, human ships were built like floating fortresses, blocky, heavily armored, and designed to absorb tremendous damage while continuing to fight. "Admiral Brooks, all ships, report ready for combat operations," Morrison reported through the communication system. "The mining platforms around Jupiter have completed their conversion to heavy weapons platforms as scheduled." Admiral Susan Brooks nodded with grim satisfaction from her command bunker beneath the Pacific Ocean. The facility had been built into the ocean floor itself, protected by miles of water and reinforced rock. From here, she could coordinate the defense of not just Earth, but the entire solar system. "What about the asteroid field installations?" she asked. Captain Patricia Hayes responded from her position near the asteroid belt, where she commanded what appeared to be a simple mining operation. "All kinetic weapon systems are armed and ready. Automated defense drones have been deployed throughout the belt according to the master plan. Any hostile fleet attempting to reach Earth will have to fight through a gauntlet of hidden weapons." The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a collection of rocky debris orbiting the Sun. However, decades of careful preparation had transformed it into the most elaborate minefield in known space. Asteroids had been hollowed out and converted into weapon platforms, while others contained missile launchers and automated fighter craft. Dr. Murphy watched his instruments as the Antarctic facility prepared for combat. To any observer, his installation appeared to be nothing more than a weather monitoring station studying climate patterns. The massive dish antennas were supposedly for atmospheric research, but they were actually components of a particle beam weapon system capable of striking targets anywhere in the solar system. "Target acquisition systems are online and calibrated," Dr. Murphy reported. "We have clear firing solutions on any hostile vessels that enter our operational range." Similar installations around Earth were revealing their hidden capabilities. Radio telescope arrays became long-range sensor networks, while scientific research stations transformed into command and control centers for orbital defense platforms. Even the International Space Station, which had been decommissioned years earlier, was actually a heavily armed fortress disguised as abandoned civilian infrastructure. The Dominion fleet continued its approach, unaware that they were flying into The most elaborate trap ever constructed by any species in galactic history, Emperor Vexithul studied his tactical displays with growing anticipation, noting the apparent lack of defensive preparations around the human homeworld. "Where are their fleets?" General Krexvoll asked as he reviewed the sensor readings. "Intelligence suggested they possess significant military capabilities, but we detect only minimal spacecraft in the vicinity of their planet." Emperor Vexthul smiled with predatory satisfaction. Perhaps the other species were correct about human preparations, but wrong about human courage. It appears they have evacuated their system rather than face the might of the Dominion Empire. The truth was far different from what the Emperor imagined. Human ships were positioned throughout the solar system, but they were hidden among the countless pieces of debris that orbited every star. Asteroid miners, cargo haulers, and research vessels were actually heavily armed warships waiting for the order to reveal their true nature. Commander Morrison reviewed the final defensive positions with his officers. "Remember, the primary objective is not to achieve a quick victory. Our goal is to demonstrate the true cost of threatening Earth and her colonies. Every minute this battle continues, every ship we destroy sends a message to the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered easily." The message was already being received by other species who monitored the approaching confrontation. Intelligence services throughout the galaxy watched as the Dominion fleet moved toward what they knew was an elaborate trap, wondering if the Empire would recognize the danger before it was too late. Captain Sandra Lewis commanded a weapons platform that had been disguised as a simple asteroid mining operation for over 20 years. Her facility was one of hundreds scattered throughout the solar system, each one capable of revealing hidden weapons when the time came for battle. "All stations report ready for combat," Lewis transmitted to the Central Command Network. "Automated systems are armed and awaiting the execute order." Earth's defensive network represented the culmination of decades of careful planning and resource allocation. Every human colony, every mining operation, every scientific expedition had contributed to building a defensive system that extended far beyond the boundaries of human space. Now that system would face its ultimate test against an enemy that refused to heed the warnings of a galaxy that had learned to fear the trap that Earth represented. The battle for Earth began not with the thunder of weapons or the flash of energy beams, but with an eerie silence that stretched across the void of space. As the massive Dominion fleet crossed into the outer boundaries of the Sol system, they encountered something that no military commander ever wanted to face. Absolutely nothing. Emperor Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying sensor displays that showed empty space where intelligence reports had suggested they would find defensive fleets and orbital installations. The blue-green planet of Earth hung in the distance like a jewel, apparently undefended and waiting to be claimed by the Dominion Empire. "Where are their military forces?" General Krexvoll asked, his voice betraying the unease that had been growing since they entered human space. "Our intelligence indicated significant defensive preparations throughout this system." The Emperor frowned as he studied the tactical information flowing across his screens. "Perhaps we overestimated these humans. It appears they have chosen to evacuate their system rather than face our superior firepower." That was when the asteroids began to move. Captain Sandra Lewis had been waiting for this moment for over 20 years. Her facility, disguised as a simple mining operation in the asteroid belt, was one of hundreds of hidden installations scattered throughout human space. At her signal, the carefully constructed facade fell away to reveal the true nature of her command. "All units, this is Operation Homecoming," Lewis transmitted across secure channels. "Execute Defensive Protocol 7. Show these invaders what happens when you threaten Earth." What the Dominion fleet had identified as ordinary space debris suddenly blazed to life with weapon signatures and hostile targeting systems. Kinetic projectiles launched from seemingly empty points in space, traveling at significant fractions of the speed of light toward the advancing enemy formation. Asteroids split open like mechanical flowers to reveal missile batteries and energy weapon arrays that had been hidden for decades. The mining ships that had appeared harmless to Dominion sensors revealed themselves to be heavily armed gunboats, their industrial equipment transforming into military hardware in a matter of seconds. Automated defense platforms that had masqueraded as scientific instruments came online throughout the solar system, creating a three-dimensional battlefield that stretched from Mercury to beyond the orbit of Pluto. The first wave of Dominion ships found themselves caught in crossfire from every direction, as human forces struck from positions they had not even known existed. The tight formation that had been perfectly designed for attacking a stationary planetary target became a massive liability when enemy fire came from above, below, and all sides simultaneously. Commander Jake Morrison's voice crackled across all human communication frequencies as the Liberty and her sister ships revealed their positions. All units remember the primary mission objective. This is not about achieving a quick victory. This is about demonstrating the cost of threatening our homes and our families. The human vessels that emerged from hiding were unlike anything the Dominion had encountered in their centuries of conquest. Where alien ships prioritized speed and elegant design, human warships were built like flying fortresses, blocky, heavily armored, and capable of absorbing tremendous punishment while continuing to fight. They had been designed specifically for this type of defensive battle. Admiral Susan Brooks coordinated the defense from her command bunker deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, watching tactical displays that showed the battle unfolding across the entire solar system. Activate the planetary surface installations. Let them see what Earth herself can do. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, Dr. Kevin Murphy watched as his climate research station completed its transformation into something far more dangerous. The massive antenna arrays that had supposedly been studying atmospheric conditions were actually components of a particle beam weapon system with the power to reach across the solar system. Target acquired and locked, Murphy reported as his systems focused on the Dominion flagship. Firing. The particle beam itself was invisible to human eyes, but its effect on the Emperor's ship was immediate and devastating. The subjugators' shields flared with brilliant light as they absorbed energy equivalent to the output of a small star. Warning alarms filled the bridge as damage reports flooded in from throughout the massive vessel. Impossible, Emperor Vex Thol roared as his ship shuddered under the impact. How can they strike us from their planet's surface? We are beyond the range of any known planetary defense system. But Antarctica was only the beginning of Earth's surface-based offensive capabilities. Hidden installations around the globe revealed themselves as the planet joined the battle directly. The Sahara Desert erupted with missile launches as underground silos opened across thousands of square miles. Mountain ranges in the Himalayas and the Andes split open to reveal energy weapon arrays that had been disguised as geological formations. The Bia moons of Jupiter suddenly came alive with weapons fire, as installations that had been hidden for decades revealed their true purpose. What had appeared to be scientific research stations were actually massive gun emplacements, capable of engaging capital ships at extreme range. Even the gas giant's great red spot seemed to join the fight as orbital platforms hidden in the planet's upper atmosphere began launching interceptor craft. Saturn's ring system erupted with automated fighters as hidden manufacturing facilities that had been disguised as mining operations began deploying defensive craft by the thousands. The beautiful ice particles that formed the planet's rings provided perfect camouflage for weapons platforms that had been waiting decades for this moment. Captain Patricia Hayes commanded the Asteroid Belt Defense Network, coordinating hundreds of hidden installations as they engaged the advancing enemy fleet. Her miners-turned-warriors had trained for this battle their entire careers, and now they demonstrated why the galaxy had learned to fear human preparations. Enemy formation is beginning to break apart, Hayes reported as Dominion ships found themselves unable to maintain their attack formation under the relentless crossfire. They're trying to scatter and retreat, but our automated systems are tracking every vessel. Even the sun itself seemed to turn against the invaders as solar observation satellites redirected concentrated stellar energy into focused beams that could melt enemy armor at ranges measured in astronomical units. The Dominion fleet, which had entered the system confident in their superior numbers and firepower, found themselves fighting not just human ships, but the entire solar system itself. Emperor Vex Thol watched his tactical displays with growing horror as ship after ship disappeared from his fleet roster. The humans had turned their entire star system into a weapon, and his forces were trapped in the center of a killing field that extended farther than his sensors could reach. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. General Krexvold checked the latest reports, his scaled features pale with shock. "Over 2,000 vessels destroyed or disabled, my lord. The survivors are scattered throughout the system and requesting immediate evacuation." The trap that the galaxy had warned about was finally springing closed, and the price of ignoring those warnings was being paid in Dominion blood and metal. The Battle of Sol lasted 18 hours of continuous combat, but the outcome had been determined within the first 30 minutes when the Dominion fleet realized they were fighting not just human ships, but the entire solar system itself. When the guns finally fell silent, fewer than 200 battered Dominion vessels limped away from the system, their hulls scarred and their crews shattered by the devastating defeat they had suffered. Emperor Vexthul stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, staring at tactical displays that showed the complete destruction of his Grand Armada. The subjugator, once the pride of the Dominion fleet, was barely functional after taking direct hits from planetary defense systems that should not have existed. Sections of the massive ship were open to space, and emergency power was the only thing keeping life support operational in the remaining habitable areas. "How?" he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible above the sound of failing systems. How did a primitive species accomplish this level of destruction against the might of the Dominion Empire? General Krexvold approached his emperor with the final casualty reports, his own uniform stained with blood from falling debris, and his reptilian features marked by the shame of absolute defeat. Nearly 3,000 ships had entered the Sol system with confidence and pride, but only a handful would return to tell the tale of their destruction. "My lord," the general spoke quietly, "perhaps they were never primitive at all. Perhaps we should have listened to the warnings of the other species, instead of dismissing their fears as cowardice." The aftermath of the battle sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as news of the Dominion's defeat spread from system to system. The human trap had been far more extensive and sophisticated than anyone had imagined, reaching far beyond the boundaries of their home system to create a defensive network that spanned dozens of light years. Dr. Lisa Campbell, now serving as Earth's primary diplomatic representative to the galactic community, stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The chamber was packed with representatives who had previously ignored human requests for full membership in galactic society, but now hung on every word she spoke. "For 50 years, Dr. Campbell said with calm dignity, humanity has sought peaceful relations with our galactic neighbors. We built our defensive systems not from aggression or territorial ambition, but from the simple knowledge that the galaxy is not always kind to species who cannot protect themselves." The holographic displays around the chamber showed the scope of Earth's defensive preparations: installations hidden in asteroid belts, weapons platforms disguised as research stations, and entire colonies that served dual purposes as both civilian settlements and military strongholds. The level of preparation and coordination required for such a system impressed even species with thousands of years of military experience. Ambassador Zethkree of the Vorthan Collective, his crystalline form now pulsing with respectful blue light, instead of the fearful orange he had displayed months earlier, stood to address the human representative. "The collective formally apologizes for our previous warnings against humanity. We now understand that your preparations were not aggressive in nature, but represented the prudent actions of a species determined to protect its independence." Commander Jake Morrison, promoted to Admiral after his exceptional performance during the battle, stood beside Dr. Campbell as Earth's military representative. His weathered face showed the exhaustion of a warrior who had just fought the largest battle in human history, but also the satisfaction of a defender who had successfully protected his home. "We never wanted to be seen as a threat to galactic peace," Morrison explained to the assembled delegates. "But when someone threatens our home, our families, our children, we become exactly what we need to be to defend them. The Dominion Empire learned the price of underestimating human resolve. The surviving Dominion ships had brought back more than just news of their defeat. They carried detailed sensor recordings and tactical data that revealed the true extent of human defensive capabilities. Species throughout the galaxy studied these reports with a mixture of awe and terror, realizing they had been sharing space with a civilization capable of turning entire star systems into weapons. Captain Patricia Hayes. Her mining ship, having survived the battle with distinction despite taking heavy damage, filed her final combat report from her position in the asteroid belt. Enemy fleet elements destroyed or scattered throughout the system. Sol defensive network remains fully operational and ready for future threats. All civilian populations are returning to surface operations according to schedule. The years following the Battle of Sol brought dramatic changes to the balance of power in the galaxy. The Dominion Empire never recovered from the catastrophic losses they had suffered, and other aggressive species took careful note of what had happened to those who chose conquest over diplomacy when dealing with humanity. Earth's colonies, which had been viewed with suspicion by neighboring species, were suddenly courted as valuable allies and trading partners. The defensive network that had seemed threatening when hidden was now revealed as a stabilizing force that could protect peaceful species from the various aggressive empires that plagued the galaxy. Dr. Richard Stone continued his work in the deep, underground facilities that had coordinated Earth's defense, but now his research focused on peaceful applications of the technologies that had proven so effective in battle. The weapons that had destroyed the Dominion fleet could be converted to asteroid mining equipment, planetary engineering tools, and space construction systems. Emperor Vexthul spent his remaining years as a broken ruler of a diminished empire, haunted by the memory of his defeat and the knowledge that his refusal to heed galactic warnings had cost thousands of lives. The Dominion territories fell into civil war as various factions fought over the remnants of what had once been a mighty interstellar power. The galaxy learned to respect the species that had proven capable of defending not just their own worlds, but their entire stellar neighborhood. Trade delegations arrived at Earth with offers of technology exchange and mutual defense agreements, while military analysts from dozens of species studied the human approach to system-wide defensive planning. Earth remained as peaceful and welcoming as it had always been, greeting visitors with open arms and genuine hospitality. But everyone who came to the blue-green world knew they walked on a planet that had demonstrated its ability to defend itself against any threat the galaxy might produce. The trap had been sprung with devastating effectiveness, and its price had been paid in full by those who chose to ignore the warnings of wiser species. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity, and the peace that followed was built on the foundation of respect earned through strength, rather than fear imposed through weakness.